A couple of people have asked me, is that a crossover? No, it's not, but kind of biggish, isn't it? In fact, it's Ford's remaining large sedan, now with the death of my dear beloved Crown Vic behind us. Let's roll XL in the 2013 Ford Taurus Limited. Check the tech. Good grief, the Taurus is big. It's got these massive lines all around. It also has to be big in another way. In the entire class of full-size sedans. Take a look at the 2014 Impala, the newly redesigned Toyota Avalon, and the heavily revised Chrysler 300. The Taurus can no longer be a car that you ride in only when you rent or visit your grandparents. And this generation certainly goes way beyond that. Now, getting in the Taurus is like sliding into the tub. Not wet, but really high and enveloping all around you. I mean, look at this big high belt line up here. An even higher brow line across the top of the dash. These sort of projections here also exude mass. The whole dash T does. Over here, Ford keeps sort of improving the responsiveness and to some degree the cleanliness of the buttons in that interface, but they still have a ways to go. These are an issue. These 4 zones around here are like what Audi does, except they're hard to get to. Look how deep and tight the bezel is around here. If you want to get to one of those, you've really got to arc your wrist and use your fingertip. Let's get specific. Over here on the media side, you've got all the major sources. Notice how that was kind of a slow transition. That's also something they have to address. AM and FM with HD radio, Sirius satellite radio, a single disc slot here for optical. Down here I've got one of my 2 USB ports being used, and that's where my iPod lives. And then you got to scroll down the menu. You can find even more here. There's my Droid set up for Bluetooth streaming. I have SD card playback as well, and some AV RCA input jacks. I want to show you one thing Ford does really well. HD radio is really great on a Ford head unit. Everything comes in and nothing you don't want. My indicator that I have a second HD channel, if I hit tune, I end up going to .2 for this station. If I want to tag that song so I can have it in iTunes later to prompt me to buy it, there's the button right there. That's sending a tag to my iPod. And you have an easy HD radio on-off up there, which you're going to use when you're in fringe coverage areas because going between HD and analog is really annoying. In the current version of Sync, you get text messages flashed on the screen. You can have them read to you or read them on said screen. And there's a bunch of canned replies available. Navigation's up here, not much has changed. It's via SD card. I like what they've done for traffic. This is something all automakers struggle with. How do you place the red, yellow, or green ink, if you will, on the road to show its traffic status? Ford's done it with kind of glowing shoulders around the traffic area, leaving them free to use a consistent color for the actual roadway itself. Our car has adaptive cruise control, so you end up with a button over here that you won't always have that's called Gap. And that's where, when you turn on the adaptive cruise, you see 4 bars in front of that little car indicator there, and that's where you set the distance you're going to follow. It's a relative thing. I'm sure in the manual it tells you roughly how many feet those are. That also ties into what we have here, which is a forward collision alert system. If you're driving along and you're closing too fast on a car in front of you, this little thing right here, you see that? That's a projector. It looks kind of like a tail light. It projects right up on the windshield right there, like a very simple head-up display that puts a big old tail light right in your face. It's coming off your dash, and of course it beeps and blares at you. What it doesn't do, though, is apply the brakes. It does, however, pre-charge them so they really grab when you do wake up and get on them. I thought about this, and it's almost not so much as collision avoidance technology as liability transfer technology. Because once this thing beeps and your brakes are supercharged, you jump on them and this car just stops. Instead of hitting the car in front of you, you're going to get rear-ended. But in most states, that's their fault. Now our car, our Limited, has what's considered the base engine on the Tauri these days, and it's an upgraded, modernized V6. No turbocharging, none of that EcoBoost stuff. It's simply a very modern V6. Sitting side saddle, of course, front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. We have the former. The numbers, 288 horsepower, 254 foot-pounds of torque. The car weighs about 4,030 pounds, kind of chunky. Gets up to 60 in 6.9 seconds. Not bad by any stretch. MPG is 1929. Now, the more interesting and brand new engine option in this big old Taurus is a little turbocharged EcoBoost 4-cylinder. Yeah, believe it or not, it would have about 17% less horsepower, but 12% better MPG. By my calculations, that $1,000 option, that's right, it costs more for the smaller engine, you'd earn back in about 3 years. So it's a reasonable alternative to consider, and I'd like to get my hands on one. As soon as we do, we'll report back. Now, the first thing to remember about driving a Taurus is that it's a Taurus. If you get too obsessed with skid pad adhesion and slalom times, you miss the point of this car. It's a big, roomy, semi-luxurious four-door sedan. What I find they've done really well on this vehicle is that I've got a comfortable ride, road input, but not too much. You could never call this car numb in its handling. And at the same time, maintains the comfort while still having responsive handling. When you get into a turn, onto a smaller road where you press it, not to its limits, because this car isn't about its limits, but press it to enjoy the road some degree. It does a very nice blending of comfort and responsiveness. Very good. A less successful blending is of this really wonderful motor. There's great, smooth, torquey, linear power there. It sounds great revving up, but it gets bogged down in a transmission and a bunch of chips and engine control computers that just seem to always be figuring out what they want to do in a committee meeting. Common to a lot of cars. It's too bad in this car because there is such a great V6 up front. Okay, let's price this big boy. $33,900 for a limited V6 front-wheel drive. On top of that, you're going to want to add package 301A. It's a good value for $2,700. You get heated and cooled front seats, the Bliss blind spot, cross-traffic alert on your butt, Sony premium audio, and the push-button start, which I could live without, but it's in there. Now, $795 on top of that unlocks a pretty darn good navigation system with great traffic display. $1195 gets you the adaptive cruise control with the forward collision alert. All in, done up CNET style, you're a tick below $40,000. That's not a bad value for a car that I think drives very nicely and has got good to great tech all the way through it. The problem is, a Taurus has no cachet. You got to buy this car because you like it, not because they do.